Hi, and welcome to Education 165 Sex Role Stereotyping and Education. Ta da! That's a sketch of me by a second grader. And it reminds me of this interesting theory that was discovered quite a bit ago regarding the Wonder Woman pose, or it's known also as the power pose. And this Dr. Cuddy explained that you could feel powerful even if you weren't that powerful, right? So what you can do is put your hands on your hips, stand up, hands on your hips, shoulders back, legs a little open wide there, and spend a couple of minutes power posing. And what this meant was just by doing that little physical act that you would actually feel more powerful. So they done some studies on it that there was a 20% increase in testosterone and a 25 decrease in the stress hormone cortisol. And so by just adapting this power pose, Wonder Woman, it made you feel more powerful. So interesting thing, right? That's called embodied cognition. So here's the little chart. So get that Wonder Woman pose going. Your testosterone rises, your cortisol decreases, and boom, you feel more powerful. Interesting theory, don't you think? I'm kind of wondering, where was that whole idea when I was younger? I'm the one on the right. That's my twin sister on the left. When I was growing up, I wasn't sure what I wanted to be, but I knew only one thing that really resonated for me was that I wanted to be a backup singer. See, that was 1965 and I was 13, a million years ago, by the way. And I wanted to be a backup singer. I wanted to be one of the Supremes, not Diana Ross. So why did I only want to be the backup singer? Looking around at that time, we used the Billboard Top 100 songs to denote what was happening, what was popular. And in 1965, 11 out of the 100 top songs were sung by women. Only 11. And the Supremes, by the way, had 20 slots, 20 and 37. In 1969, the first astronaut landed on the moon. Why was this such a disconnect for me? Why didn't I care? Sally Ride was the first female astronaut, and she went out into space in 1983. Excuse me. So stats aren't all the way up. 2020 is when the last time I looked at the research. So there's a few more, right? But as of 2020, only 566 people who traveled to space. That was all that had traveled to space. Not very many people, right? 65 of them, or about 11.5%, were women. Love her. So what would have happened if I'd seen more female astronauts when I was growing up? What would my trajectory have been? Astronaut? Rock star? So the messages we receive as children and as adults really has some power. So what I did is I entered the field of teaching because that seemed to be one of the options, right, for women. I took something called the CBEST test, which meant that I had to pass a math test that only went up to about 7th grade algebra. And guess what? I didn't pass it. I missed it by about 3 points and had to study and take it over. So what if I had been encouraged to try harder at math? What would have happened? What could I have been? Scientist? Architect? So those messages we receive are really important. And this is kind of what the class is all about, I think, in a way, is the messages that girls and women receive in our society. So this class is an intensive writing class. It's also cross-listed with women's studies, which means it's primarily focuses on women. That's what we're talking about mostly in here. It's a focus on women. And it also meets the criteria for race and ethnicity. So what does that all mean? It means there's going to be tons of writing, and it's going to be crammed in here, right, with this compressed class. It also means there's going to be sensitive content. So just right off the get-go, not that there's going to be any lurid sort of tales from me, but it is sensitive, some things we're talking about, because we talk about topical issues, and we talk about racism and sexism and misogyny and xenophobia and homophobia and ableism, and well, there's so many, right? So a couple things just off the bat, a couple stereotypes that, not stereotypes, because that's one of the terms I want to talk about. First, gender bias. Gender bias, unfair preference for or treatment of one sex or gender over another, right? Pretty simple. Stereotypes, we would know about that. Like what we do, how we undo people by sending out ugly messages about whatever, their race, their gender, their ability, their whatever, right? So stereotypes are an important way of shaping how girls and women do things versus boys and men. Lots of stereotypes continue to be perpetuated by virtue of our society and gender socialization. Big stereotype, boys don't cry, right? Another one, hit like a girl. You hit like a girl, I wouldn't mind hitting like this girl. So we're going to talk a lot about gender construction. And so basically, sex roles are biologically determined, and gender roles, how you decide if you're feminine or masculine, they're culturally determined. And we're learning more about that now with the big transgender explosion, right? We can kind of put a finger on that more. It makes a little bit more sense. So I'll get into that a little bit later. But gender stereotypes and expectations have a developmental history that starts with learned notions of femininity and masculinity. So these notions are learned in our society, and some of the ideas are ascribed to feminine, some of them are ascribed to masculine, and a little bit of in between, right? So the deal is that children form ideas about gender really early, like 2 years old. They're already knowing I'm a girl and I'm a boy. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but when you think about just what it means to be a girl and a boy in our society, and just female or male, then you realize there's a lot of expectations and a lot of stereotypes for both genders, but there's a lot of devaluing of the female gender. And so that can be a little problematic, right? So look at these studies. It shows that 3-year-old girls already know how they're supposed to act as a girl, how they're supposed to be feminine, how they're supposed to kind of check out and make sure that they're cute or, pretty or, I don't know, all those things. And they want to perpetuate that. So I love this highly invested in body image. Girls are already by age 3. That's really young, and are eager perpetuators of socially established stereotypes. Meaning, yeah, I want to be that princess because I'm going to get a lot of feedback and a lot of praise for being a princess. So already body image is so incredibly important at such a young age. Astounding, right? So this stereotype we all know about. Excuse me. Why am I coughing and doing a lecture? I don't know. Sorry about that. So everyone knows pink's for girls and blues for boys, and that notion has been around forever, since dinosaurs. Not really, in the scheme of things, it hasn't been around that long. I mean, from about the 1920s, which I know seems forever ago, but when you think of the evolution of humankind, it's really just a drop in the bucket. And actually, pink used to be a boy's color. It used to be a derivative of red, which is strong, and mighty, right? And blue was a girl's color, all placid and peaceful and beautiful and quiet, right? So what we do by instilling certain traits on girls and boys is we market them in certain ways, right? And that determines how you're supposed to act. So just simple things like this. The idea, these are teething rings, and Look at the one for the girl's for a sweet baby girl. And look what it is. It's a friggin' engagement ring. Da 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 da. Put a ring on it, right? It's a diamond ring. It's bling. It's bedazzled. And look what the boy gets for a busy baby boy. It's a hammer. If I had a hammer, I'd hammer in the morning. I mean, a hammer's like a weapon. It's a tool. Build the world and defend yourself as well. And you know, I'm taking this over the top a little bit, but kind of not really, because these messages, obviously, when you're 2 months old or 3 months old, you're not going to, oh, goody, I'm engaged. You know, the kids aren't to say anything about it, but the adults around them are. So we receive these messages at a really young age. And the deal is, things change, right? So for upper middle class and rich people in the Victorian ages, if you were white, of course, is that boys, when they were taking their family photos, they were dressed up in dresses because that was a sign of status. So what I wanted to talk about today is this. Excuse me. If the shoe fits. Gender as a social construct. And we're going to talk about spiders for just 1 second. So, gender is constructed by culture and society. What does that mean? Let's just skip over to spiders for a second. I think it's easier. So, spiders, right? For some of you, it's like, oh, spiders. So the deal is there's 3,000 species of spiders in North America. So of those spiders found in North America, there's only one species, the Latrodectus, that is considered really dangerous. And that Latrodectus species are responsible for about 4 people dying from spider bites. So 4 people dying from spider bites a year in the U.S. Okay, so last time I ran the numbers was in 2019, and I haven't changed it, but you get the idea. So 4 people out of all those millions of people in the United States get bitten by spiders. 4 of them die. 4 people die from spider bites. But why are so many people afraid of spiders? Like all ages, right? I mean, there's even a little nursery rhyme that probably isn't around anymore. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. I think, and frightened poor maybe Miss Muffet. I don't know. But look at that spider. Pretty creepy. And it has the spoon. The spoon. It has little Miss Muffet's spoon in its hand. And it's going after her. So why don't we love spiders? Why don't we love spiders? Would you do that? Would you hold your hand out and let that big old tarantula be on it, on your palm? Can you feel it now? Like, put your palm out. Can you feel it? So the fear of spiders is called arachnophobia. So the deal is that the fear of spiders is not universal. It's not necessarily globally. It doesn't hop all over the world as, a phenomena. And for some people, it runs in the family because, like, if your parents or your grandparents were afraid of spiders, they're going to pass it on down to you. And so psychologists believe that arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, is kind of more culturally sort of inspired. It's like you grow up with it. If someone in your group's like afraid, you're going to be afraid. And that many cultures believe that spiders are really good luck. They're good fortune. And some people think they're pretty delicious too. So arachnophobia, the fear of spiders, is a cultural phenomena. It varies from all over the place, right? So arachnophobia is constructed by culture and society, right? Because it just depends on where you live or the messages you receive. So that means sorry, I'm just looking at that costume. That means that gender is also kind of constructed by society. I mean, there's really big defining things globally, especially now that we're just like social media. We're all on the same page, literally, with all of our feeds, right? We just get it like that. So it's not like there's any hidden secret places where there's just drastic differences in how we view gender. But it's a similar construct in that it depends on the messages that you're fed at the time. And right now we have different certain messages that we're fed, and that makes us more feminine or more masculine. Kind of simple, right? Not too difficult, but a little hard to necessarily believe, right? Because you can say, oh no, guys are stronger. That's why they're tougher. And, yeah, they do. They are stronger. They have upper body strength. And we'll go into this a little later, like what the expectations we have on guys, on males, to be that stronger. What a bum deal for them. So the deal is that I am in the pool of believing that the differences in gender is the differences in how we socialize females versus males, and not necessarily biological factors. I mean, those are involved, and especially next week when I talk about undone by the plow. I mean, you can see some real reasons why those are there. So I'm not trying to discount, certain biological traits of females and males. Excuse me. I'm not trying to do that at all. But basically, sex roles were biologically determined. So I'm not talking about sex roles. I'm talking about gender roles. And gender roles are more culturally determined. And not that, again, you don't fold in some of the ideas. Like, well, if females have, are the ones who birth kids and all that. So that's a whole different thing. But just kind of basically this. Cultural construction of gender. Sex is biologically determined. Bing. Gender is culturally determined. Bing. Different cultures have distinctive ideas about females and males. Or we could say different times in our evolution, in our whole world, we have distinctive ideas about females and males. And then these ideas define womanhood, femininity, and manhood, masculinity, or it just does. And it happens really quickly, right? You start getting that gender socialization even before you're born, right? Just the minute that your parents, your mother is pregnant and someone's asking, are you a girl or are you a boy? That's when it happens, bing, before you even come into this world. Because I mean, do you know, like when someone says, oh, I'm having a girl, oh, you might pat that pregnant belly, stomach a little bit. Oh, that's so sweet. Or you're having a boy. Oh, you're having a boy. So it definitely starts right with this, right? We want to ascribe immediately those traits. We want to push those traits on. And a lot of it's marketing. Don't get me wrong on that. But we have been led to believe that we really need to push certain things on girls and certain things on boys. And we're having big old fights about it now, aren't we? I mean, we look at transgenderism and what's happening in Florida and all over the place. We're like, and just the whole thing going on with drag queens and stuff. I mean, it's like we got a lot of stuff about all that, about gender. That's for sure. So what we're going to talk about in this class is pretty much those agencies, those ways we push gender onto our girls and boys and young women and young men and women and men in our society, how we do that. And we're going to talk a lot or briefly about a couple of things that are really, really successful conduits of generating how you're supposed to act based on your gender of being a girl or being a male or female. And we're going to talk about them. There's family, schools, and media. That's going to be what your first essay's on, family, schools, and media. And so I want to go over that pretty briefly, and we'll talk about it some more. But when I'm saying family, there's peer groups, and peer groups can usually kind of start, when you're in school, when you really start believing your friends. So that's kind of part of school and the hidden curriculum. So there's a lot of merging here. But basically, when we look at the influence of family, for example, and this is a Christmas card that I just pulled up somewhere, and there's probably some humor in it, right? Uh, but it's a really strong message. It's a strong message on so a Christmas card, peace on earth, a familiar saying during the time of Christmas, and how are the males in this family achieving peace on earth? Duct tape over the females' mouths, including the adult female, and they're tied up with Christmas lights. So cute, right? It's I don't think it's cute. And look who has the most power. Of course, the man of the family, but look who has the second most power. The youngest kid in the family, because he's a boy, right? So if you just see these once in a while, it's not that big of a deal. But if you see these kind of messages over and over, right, the messages we receive, then it is a big deal. And that's how we learn to play our roles in the world. And so, specifically among like white middle class North America parents, one thing is that female infants are viewed just like barely when they were born as just more softer and delicate and just so beautiful, and just so, let's be careful with them, than their male counterparts. And I'm saying white females because we'll talk about how non-white females are viewed, and there's a couple of things we'll be reading about that in some studies. So it is specific to the delicate nature. It's a whole nother story, which we'll get into, a horrific story, actually, we'll get into. So here's an example. I'm a preschool teacher, and also, and this was one of my little charges, and her name was Jax. So she's really kind of rough and tumble, sort of, and she's like probably almost getting close to 3 here. You can't tell because it took a while for her hair to come in and stuff. But I wanted to show you so that when we look at the influence of parents on shaping gender, is so she comes into my preschool, and we do a lot of muddy stuff. We do all sorts of stuff, right? And so she comes in not prepared for preschool. She's wearing, first of all, some sandals that they like light up, which is mighty cool. Don't get me wrong. But these sandals cause Jax to trip and stuff just because of maybe the rubber on the front. And, she needs some laced up tennis shoes, right? And then look what she has on. What is the point of that little spaghetti strap on one side? Because what that little spaghetti strap continue to do all day long is to fall off of her shoulder and needed adjusting, and she needed to kind of reorganize it. So she's not ready for the day. So parents do lots of stuff. And when you dig into your essay, you'll find some more things that how they help shape how their girls are going to be versus their boys. I just remember my twin sister had her kids much sooner than I did. And she had a girl and she had a boy. So her girl had really long hair. They were a couple years apart. Long hair. So here's Blair getting her long, thick hair brushed before they could go outside and play. And she's kind of squirming, sometimes crying. And her brother Drew, boom, he's already outside, right? He's already outside because his locks do not need to be tended to. So lots of messages there, which I know that I'll be iterating all through this class because it's what I do. Another really strong way to make sure that you play the proper gender roles are your peer groups, right? And it happens before you get into school, but it's also a part of school too, just really listening to those kids around you. And wow, some messages there, let me tell you. So as you know, so right when they start playing with other friends, they kind of really change. I don't know if any of you have kids in here, but yeah, when your kids go out into that sullied world, lots of things happen in terms of maybe what you didn't want to have happen to your kids. So in this is an example of, it was probably about 3 years ago in my preschool here on the island. I was just walking by, so you can see my tennis shoe in there. I was just walking by and 3 boys were playing. And the kingpin of the boys is Hayden. He's at the lower left-hand corner. So the other 2 looked up to Hayden. They were going to do whatever Hayden wanted to do. And so they're just playing with this kind of, actually more difficult than it looks, a little manipulative, where you build stuff. And so what's wrong with this picture? You can look at it and maybe you kind of already have an idea of where I'm going with this whole class is, look what's going on. What colors aren't they using? It's really obvious, right? They picked out all the colors except for the pink and purple because Hayden and society, based on marketing, and then we all believe it, is Hayden said that he doesn't like pink and purple because pink and purple's for girls, and girls are less than boys, right? So if I put 500 kids in my backyard, which I could fit 500 kids, I think, it'd be a pretty, I'm looking at it, be pretty big a mess. But if I could fit 500 kids in my backyard, guess what? If they were all girls, 99.99% of them, their favorite colors would be pink and purple. And so the deal with that is that Margaret Mead, famous cultural anthropology, is what we do is we teach boys to not value things that girls value. And lots of societies do that, right? They teach them not to be female. Like, don't hit like a girl. I mean, there's all sorts of things. And so those messages are replicated over and over again. And the deal is that the messages are so bountiful, so plentiful that you can't help but notice them. And here's just an example of Mailbox is a preschool magazine. And so, like, what's wrong with this picture? Besides that they're both white, and that's improved a little bit. But besides that we represent the dominant culture much more than anybody else, what else is wrong with this picture? You already know, maybe, right? Is that the girl is looking at the boy doing something. Now, I'm not saying that girls shouldn't look at boys doing something or at all. But if those messages are played out all over the place over and over again in so many formats, right? Like this is from some outdoor, sport clothes and the guy's, he's looking at something really cool. And besides that, they're both white, The deal is that here he's looking at something with his awesome binoculars. Probably it's like could be a bald eagle. I don't know. Something pretty cool. And what is the woman looking at? She's looking at him looking at something. Look out there. You're missing something good. Grab those binoculars, girl. So that's what we do. We teach our boys to undervalue girl stuff. And as I said, it's a bum deal for girls, but it's a bum deal for boys too. One more quick example from my preschool. It's like we do dance party every day, every morning. And it's not mandatory. You don't have to do a dance party. You can do whatever you want. But look what's happening in these photos. The girls are dancing. You see in the back, the boys have just decided they're going to sit on what we call the block box back there. They're sitting there as if they're doing time. They could go, the room's big. There's all sorts of other things going on, even though we play the music kind of loud. So, right? So the girls are dancing. None of the boys are dancing. Look at them back. They're hanging their heads down. Sitting there because, I don't know, did they think they had a timeout? I don't know timeouts. They can go do whatever they want. So, bum deal for boys that they don't get to dance. Especially white boys, they need to dance. Got to learn how to dance. School, same thing. All sorts of messages in school. What you should do as a girl versus what you should do as a boy. Right? Teachers' behavior adds to the whole idea of what you should do. Teachers spread that out, mostly female teachers, right? 99% of the teachers are female, and they're continuing to practice those roles that were handed down to them and instill them on. It's just like, crazy. So kids who could just be kind of kids, all of a sudden, because of everything we do, they turn into girls and boys. So, because the deal is boys get to move in a bigger way. They get to take up more space. Girls are busy adjusting their hair and their little bows. And maybe, they wear leggings to school. And they're all get all twisted and they're cold in leggings here in the Pacific Northwest, but they're still going to wear them and they're going to freeze and cry and moan. So, yeah. And the thing is, boys demand more from their teachers. Not saying that's a wrong thing to do at all, right? They've learned how to take up more space, ask more questions, and so we do classroom management, and we answer the boys more, and we manage the boys more, so they get a lot more attention. Girls have learned how to be less quiet, and not less quiet, more quiet, and they don't expect as much, and so they're not given as much. Media is a really big thing. We could go into that, like ad nauseum, right? The idea of what's happening there. And the messages we receive in media, especially with social media and TikTok, all these fabulous but overwhelmingly sexist and stereotyped and racist and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, social feeds just give us the idea of what is right and what's wrong. It's everywhere, right? And it's in your streams, I don't even know if you call it television anymore, right? But all the shows you watch, if you read magazines anymore, video games, crazy, right? Books, all of it, that those messages tell us that females are so much less important. I mean, they tell us also that non-white everybody's also less important. So we'll get into that too. And the toys, don't even get me started on toys. Oh, don't get me started. So boys get cool stuff. They get open-ended things. They get to use their imagination more. The stuff they get, they can put together, make other things. They can do things with it. There's open-ended stuff. Girls still, and I'm not saying there's exceptions to this rule, but they're still marketed some really set toys, right? I mean, in that little whimsical kitchen back there, it's pretty cool looking. I'm not denying that, but there's only so much you can do with it, right? And we push girls into that, and boys know that that's less than. They, learn to like not like what girls like, so they're going to stay right out of that little kitchen corner. And so we're teaching girls to do set things and not use their imagination as much, not use their spatial abilities as much. I mean, the list goes on. And I'm not saying you shouldn't learn how to care for things, not what I'm saying. But when those messages are pushed all the time, it's crazy. Boys get to use their imagination more, and like this, like boys can use their toys to build something new or to imagine flying off to outer space, whereas girls can pretend to use their toys to iron clothes and wash dishes. Sounds awful, doesn't it? And it sounds like I'm exaggerating, but I don't think I am. That looks cool. What the heck can you do with this? That big old iron so you can wash your clothes. I mean, how can you like turn it into something else? Because you can't even fit inside of there. So, right? And then the studies also show that girls, because they're invested in showing off their girlness, right? As young as 3 years of age, and they get all these rewards for it, that appearance is everything. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel proud and wonderful about how you look, but there's a certain value, there's a certain standard beauty, and it's a white dominant culture standard beauty that hardly anyone, even when you're white, that you can't achieve. So you go from this to this, and then you see studies that say yeah, all women just care about their appearance, and I'm going to care about my appearance too. 87% of girls think women are judged on appearance and not ability. Because hello, they are. So another study, 10-year-olds. These are some 10-year-olds that girls had already. 80% of 10-year-old girls have been on a diet. Crazy making. So gender is constructed by culture and society. We're going to talk about that a lot. And we're going to talk about wanting to give better messages for girls and females, women, just better messages for females. Because remember that whole embodied cognition thing, right? Is that even when you pretend to be powerful, you are more likely to be more powerful. You're going to feel it. You're actually going to feel it. It's a direct cause and effect. Amazing. So what if we gave girls better messages and young women and women? What if we gave them better messages and bigger messages? Big messages. That's what we're going to talk about in this class. Let's give them a fabulous Wonder Woman, right? Bigger messages. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you soon.